does Satan deceive? By giving you a lot of truth and then some elementary errors. Because if Muhammad said that it was conveyed to him by Gabriel that Jesus did not die an atoning death, not die at all, and was not crucified, then that could never have been the angel Gabriel. Would you agree with me? Yes, you would. Well, who was it? Who else? Must be the enemy of souls, the one who wished that Calvary never would have happened. Deceives mankind in believing that Jesus was a prophet, but he was not God, and you have no Redeemer, and you have no mediator. Your sins are not paid for. You understand? This is very serious. And so I believe the man was misled, intentionally and purposely, by the other side. Have a look at map. I love looking at historical maps. Here, have a look at this. This is Eastern Rome, Byzantine Empire. Byzantine means Greek Empire in 1265 AD. There's an arrow here with a dot here, and there's a place called Nicomedia. Very close to it is a place called Bathium, or Batium as you might express it. Some decades later, there's going to be a major battle. I'll talk about that in a minute. I want you to see the size of the Byzantine Empire here. Can you see that? That's Constantinople, today's Istanbul. And you can see here what it describes, the Byzantine Empire, and notice here 1265, thereabouts, AD. Now I'm going to show you the difference. Oh, before I do that, I want to show you two other places, Iconium and this one, Aleppo. This is just above the dominion of the Mamluks. Now I want you to see this, because those names come up in a minute. But I'm now taking you into the future, a little bit further down the track, 90 years later. 90 years later, have a look at the division here. That is the Byzantine Empire, much smaller, isn't it? And here we have the Ottoman Turks. All this territory was lost because the Battle of Bathin found place in 1299, and that battle heralded the conflict between Muslim Islam, seriously, and Byzantine Rome. And so you can see how far they have progressed. They are virtually at the doors of Constantinople. There's just a bit of water in between, right? You see, the Islamic fighters were great in the field. You couldn't stop. But they didn't quite know how to take a city. And to take a city of Constantinople, that was impossible. You should see the walls. There are still ruins today, leftovers. It well protected. It well protected the Byzantine Empire, but you can see the decline. You can see the dominance of the Muslims right in front of their very door. And so they certainly wouldn't have far to go. The Battle of Bathium was a most important battle. Now note what it says here in verse 9, chapter 9, verse 5. But only those men who did not have the seal of God. Remember, they had these shaven crowns. Now of course these were obviously the inhabitants there, the religious leaders of Byzantium. And they were not given authority to kill them. They couldn't finish off the Byzantine Empire for 150 years. They couldn't do it. The walls of Istanbul were all but too high and too powerful. They were allowed to torment them for 150 years. And so that's exactly what they did do. Now, if you look at, and I'm just looking at the wrong end here, the Battle of Bathium, 150 years, plus 150 years, brings you to the 27th of July, 1449. I'll go back because I mucked it up a little bit. That's what you get when you're too clever. The 27th of July, 1299. You with me? It begins. 150 years added to the 1299 brings you obviously to 1449. So the date that we are dealing with, the conclusion of the fifth trumpet, is actually, if you take that historical event of the Battle of Barthim, and all historians do, you can see that the conclusion of the 150 years here is the 27th of July of 1449. Did everybody follow that? If you didn't, I'm very happy to repeat it. Mike, it's going to cost you. Do you understand what we are having here? We have now the completion of the fifth trumpet, which is of course the end of the fifth trumpet, but therefore consecutive to it, it is also the beginning of the sixth trumpet. So the beginning of the sixth trumpet is the 27th of July, 1449. Everybody agrees? If you don't, it's okay. Just remain quiet. Now, let's have a look here. I told you it wasn't simple. Let's look at the historical facts. The last emperor there in Byzantine Rome requests permission of the Turkish, the Ottoman Sultan, to ascend the throne. You see, they haven't taken Istanbul yet, was known as Byzantium, before Constantinople. But the situation is so precarious that he asked permission of the Ottoman to be the next emperor. Such permission, which was requested in 1448, finally was answered, and there on the 6th of January 1449, he is crowned. This event will tell you that the status of Eastern Rome, Byzantine Rome, was hopeless. Yet, the doors were still closed. They could keep them up, but it didn't last very long. Look at the history. Look at the history. The collapse of the Byzantine Empire was sealed, of course, with the fall of Constantinople here on the 16th of May at 1453. They got in. They destroyed that city. How did they get in? Now, if you study your history, and particularly how Constantinople fell, you would learn very quickly that the Muslims, they got themselves batteries of cannons, very primitive. This is about the time that gunpowder was invented. This is the time when it was introduced to warfare. And they had the muskets, which is the forerunner of the rifles. They had cannons, very primitive, but boy did they work. They pounded and pounded and pounded the walls of Constantinople until they breached the wall, and the last emperor, I'll say that for him, died fighting in the breach, but they got in. And that is how Constantinople fell, because of the usage of gunpowder. Now let's have a look at the text of the sixth angel. Under the fifth angel, they couldn't finish them off, Byzantine Rome. But under the sixth, it's very different. And so the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God. So this is from heaven. And he goes on to say, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, he said this to him: release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. Four angels that were bound, restricted, but that restriction is taken away because they are released. You understand? Are you following me here? Very good, very good. I'd just like to make sure that you don't